What's going on, guys? A big welcome to you all to our channel. We are Team Crushing the Meta. You're here with D-Boy, and we are back with yet another video to talk about Spike Wars in Standard. So I've been getting a lot of questions lately, like, yo, D-Boy, there are different builds that you could build with the Rising Nova. Which build are you going with and why? So in my eyes, there are, when you're talking about Rising Nova, there are 3 builds that you could build, maybe even 4 if we talk about a budget one. So the first one is the most consistent one, which is the one that I play, who plays less grade 3s and play more of the same cards. As you can see right here, there are like only 3 different grade 3s, 3 different grade 2s, and 3 different grade 1s. The second build is the build that plays the Juggernaut maximum, which is also a very strong build, could give you a stronger early game and a better grade 3 right turn. So the third turn will be even stronger with the recent ability of the Spiking Cyclone. Of course, you will be able to move the markers, but also have the Juggernaut in there to hit for higher numbers. So so you could play like 2 or 3 copies of this guy. And of course, the last but not least is we have maybe is least we have the build that could play the Siegfried, let's say, or other grade 3 tech cards that you want to run in the deck that, let's say, make the deck interesting to play, but it doesn't really make it more consistent, because of course you could target this with the Rising himself. You could create a huge reward by burning those Count Blasters, but then you need to change the deck around and to make it more playable with that build. And with that, you play more tech cards. You play the Rabbit, you play the Counter Charger, grade 1, and with that you'll be able to fill your soul and just create crazy columns, and maybe still being able to restand them with Siegfried. So before we get to the actual content of this video and talk about these builds, first of all, don't forget to check the other deck profile, the long deck profile that I did on the channel. With that, I explained the card skills, because of course these cards are in Japanese, or they're not out in English yet. For like maybe a month we have to wait. And yeah, with that, so check that deck profile out. In that I explained mostly what the cards do and how the deck would look like, for me at least. And I also explained the consistent build, which is the same build as this one, but in this video we'll talk about the other builds as well. Of course, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed already. Alright, so first of all, the most important cards that you have in the deck, and the triggers. Let's talk about those first. The trigger lineup will, in my eyes, still be the same in most builds, because we now have Rising, and Rising gives us the opportunity to use Force 1 and Force 2 at the same time. Even moving them with Bull Spike mean you could still move Force 1 and Force 2 at the same time. It thus makes the deck very, very, very strong, and also give us a reason to play the 6-on-6, 6 crit, 6 draw, because there is no reason to go 8 crits anymore. So yes, we play Rising Nova also at 4. Rising Nova is, of course, the most important grade 3 in the deck. He gives you the markers, he gives you the ability to target 2 of your grade 3s and gain their skills. This is, of course, definitely a VR worthy. We have seen a lot of these cards coming back, like Gallop, like Blade Master, like all of those new grade 3s, and some of us are asking themselves, are these really GR worthy? We talk about, let's say, Gallop, maybe not, but Suzuno is great, Blade Master is great, especially the second one. The first one is less good. But when we have Rising Nova right here, I would say one of the best of these remade cards from the G era. And this card was always very, very, very important for me as a player. And me and him had a long journey from going towards from my first stop, and now coming back into the V era to make our spike decks even stronger. So definitely play the 4 copies of Rising Nova. Then the other card that you really want to play in the deck is actually Rona. Up to you. I've seen people play less copies of her and still want to tech the Spike Monster in here, or Ronaldo. You could do that. Again, the downside about Spike Monster is, of course, his skill costs a Counter Blast and a Soul Blast, but you actually need all the Soul for your Rising Nova. His second ability costs still a Counter Blast to go to the Soul to draw a card, which is good, but I think we have better cards. Talking about Ronaldo, if you ask about the SPs that are in my deck, I can't have everything in here. Talking about Ronaldo, of course, Ronaldo will replace himself, as we talked about that in the other videos and multiple time on videos, is that I dislike Ronaldo because Ronaldo always will be there on your field, or you will call on top of it, which is something you just don't really want to do, and that's the reason why we don't play it. Well, Rona right here has, of course, her second ability. If she's in the same column as a grade 3, she gets boost. So she will never be in the way. She will just go to the back row and then boost that grade 3 and still hit amazing numbers. So that's important about her. And then for the grade 1s, there are some cards that are stable, and some people will say the Acrobat Verde is a stable card to play at 4. But for me, it's not necessary to play the Acrobat Verde at 4, but it's very necessary to play the new double R grade 1, which is, of course, the Ambush Dexter. So Ambush Dexter, playing him at 4 is important. Of course, all of these will be in SP. But yes, we just play Ambush Dexter at 4 for the reasons that the card gives you utility, being able to search the grade 3s or grade 2s and just make the deck way more consistent. So one of the reasons why the card should be at 4. Some people took him out and play him just at 3, and then with time they actually came across some problems that he helped. Riding into it, just discarding the draw trigger or the quick shield and drawing a new card is, of course, also very, very, very good. Or maybe if you have a lot of grade 3s in hand, yes, you could do that. Another card that you need to put into the deck is, in my eyes, of course, the 4 copies of Bull Spike. Depending on which deck you are trying to build, I could see you going from 3 to 4. Again, I would not play 2, but 3 is the minimum. So definitely important card to keep in the deck, but you could play it at 3, which we'll talk about the other builds and how it's used at 3. For the grade 2s, the second card that we want to keep in the deck is, of course, the Bracky. Bracky is the reason why we don't play Juggernaut. It's because we already have that powerful hitter in the deck that gives you more soul, that just be the 30k with the marker. Of course, Juggernaut is a 33k with a marker, which means when you go second, this will be more effective than the Bracky, but it's just 5k more on one attack, because most of the time you boost the Bracky on the first attack, and then on the second attack you can't boost him anymore by resending with the Rising, or you do it the other way around, you first attack without boost and then with boost. And if you're boosting it by an 8k, then they hit the same number, which is, of course, this would be 41, this would be 38, which is again the same number, but the attack that he attacks on his own, attacking into a grade 3, this does make a difference. We'll talk later about the reason why Juggernaut is not in here, but for now, of course, we will play the 4 Brackies, and as we said before, of course, the Acrobat Verde. It's another card that you don't really have to play at 4, but it does make the deck more consistent to play him at 4. Just to be able to search the right grade 3 to your hand is always good, and yeah, it's the same as Bull Spike. You could take one out, you could take one out to play any other cards you want to play in here. Last but not least, for the grade 3s is a very important new grade 3 that we have, which is, of course, the Spiking Cyclone. And for the grade 2s, we actually play our Barbaric, which is a big shield. And then for the grade 1, we play the 4 copies of Wonder Boy. And that's the most balanced deck that we could create. The most consistent deck, let's say, that we could create while going into the let's say, the way that we build the deck right now for Rising. Okay, let's take the triggers out so we have more space to talk about the other options, because again, the triggers in my eyes will actually still be the same in the most situations. All right, let's leave this one in here because yes, just too beautiful. Okay, so other grade 3s that we could run in the deck that could make the deck different. Of course, as we said before, the Juggernaut Marksman. And if you want to run the Juggernaut maximum, the least that you could do is you need to play 2 or 3 copies of it. So let's say that you play 2, then you could just do it like this, and then you're set to go. But most people would like to play him at 3, because that would be easier to get him with Ambush Dexter, and you could first get him with Rona. If you end up drawing 1, then you could still at least get the ability of him, and with that you need to take out 1 Great 1, because you don't want to take out another Great 3. And the Great 1 that you could take out is of course the Acrobat Verdi, as we said. So your deck would be pretty much like this. So you have, this is 4, 6, so that's 10, so this is 12 Great 3s, which again make the deck very, we'll not say very inconsistent, but let's say less consistent, because now we have like the Great 3s in the deck that you actually don't want to ride, which are the Juggernaut and also the Spiking Cyclone right here. Riding into these 2 is always good. Then if you want to play the deck like this, which is possible, some people would say, well, actually I would like to keep the Acrobat Verdi in the deck, because it's an important card, especially by me playing these Great 3s. I want to be able to search the right Great 3 to my hand. And with that, then you need to take out the Ambush Dexter or the Wonder Boy. Now let's say you take out the Wonder Boy, so you will play like this, and then you have 3 more Great 1s to run in the deck. And you would not run those random 3 Wonder Boys, but you have another card that you would like to run, which is of course the Commander Gary Cannon. So you add the 3 Commander Gary Cannon, and then you would say, oh, okay, but now I have no cards that could recycle the right cards to my deck. And with that, you take the Barbaric out, of course, and you run the new branch in the deck. So it would look a little bit like this, which again is very possible for our second build. This is a very, very, very strong card, and depending on the format that you're playing in, this card would come and go. And if we're playing the Luard format, then I'm a big fan of this card because it has a huge shield, especially riding the second time into Rising. But if you're playing more of a format that there are Excel clans, there are clans that focus on Protect 2, then or still Altmal, then I would definitely run this card, because he take out all of those interceptors. He is good against clans like Narukami, because he leaves an empty regular circle behind him in the front row, and he just goes to soul and draw your card, which just give you even 1 more soul for the Bull Spike ability, of course. And the deck looking like this is good, because he gives you the opportunity to put those cards back to your deck. Ambush Dexter still be able to target any of these Great 3s to create Juggernauts. He being able to recycle those cards, and of course these 2 give you a very strong early game. So why don't I play the Juggernauts is a question that have been asked multiple times, let's say in the community of Spike Runners, and also people that asked me personally, like, yo, hey T-Boy, why don't you play Juggernaut? Don't you like him? Well, I'm a big Juggernaut fan. Most of you guys know that I play Juggernaut still in my premium deck, just because of the art, because of how good he is, and because he hits amazing numbers. Reasons why I don't play him in this deck is I don't want to take him out of my deck using Rona's skill. What I want to get with her skill is a Bull Spike or a Spiking Cyclone, depending on which card I already have in my hand. Why do I want to do that? Because when I want to get into that Rising turn, I want to have those ready on my field. And having the Juggernaut in there gives you a beater, but you still need to get that Bull Spike and the Spiking Cyclone into your hand. And I just don't want to have a hand full of those Great 3s. That's one of the reasons that it's not necessary to play the Juggernaut, because then you will use her ability to get the Juggernaut, and then you don't have these, and then you have to gamble on him to get him into your hand. Use just another Counterblast, so that's 2 Counterblasts already, 1, 2, and you need this, that's 3 Counterblasts, and that's a lot. That's a lot. Most of the time you will be just at 2 damage or 1 damage going into that Great 3 turn, because your opponent will also be attacking into Vanguard. You will be rushing them, and not they are rushing you. So with testing, you should have the same conclusion that I did, and that's playing the Juggernaut is just not worth it, because he kind of make the deck less consistent. and playing that extra bull spike in the deck is actually very, very good, because riding into the um, the uh, the Rising Nova first is amazing, because now you have the two markers, and then after that it doesn't really matter what you ride into. You could just ride into the Bull Spike, ride into the Spiking Cyclone, ride into another Rising Nova. It's all good, as long as you don't ride, of course, into the Juggernaut. Of course. Okay. Now we have other cards that we could run in the deck. As we talked about this before, you also have the opportunity to run the Siegfried. Running the Siegfried means, of course, that you have to change your grade 1 lineup, and you have to take these out to put the countercharger in here, or rabbit. Pretty much up to you to build the deck that you want to, but making or putting all of those cards in the deck will, of course, make the deck very inconsistent. This is the least consistent build that we have for Spike Brothers, and that's because we have a lot of cards that are good and have just like good combos that you could do with the deck. This is the counter charger that I talked about, and this is of course the rabbit, and you could just play like the two rabbits on the 2 or 3 or even 4 counter chargers, depending on really what you want to do. But again, these cards do nothing when calling. Just call them from hand. You need to superior call them, and that's why people would still play Ronaldo in these kind of decks. Which your game plan is you don't focus on Spiking Cyclone. You actually focus more on the Siegfried, and Siegfried will be able to call these cards out of your deck by targeting them, of course, on the field, and then you will be able to attack from the back row, and then you'll also be able to countercharge with her, so you keep activating the ability of Siegfried multiple times, and with that you have more soul, you create a stronger field, and it's good, it's fun, but it's just it's inconsistent as fuck, and that's one of the reasons why when you play these kind of decks in huge tournaments, like let's say you play a Swiss of 7 rounds, then you want a consistent deck, because if you have a deck that doesn't really work, then yes, you are already falling behind. You just don't want that, or at least for me, I just dislike that, and that's why the build that I play is, in my eyes, the most consistent. Now let's talk about another build. Now, this is the build that some people have in mind, because let's say that they don't have the older cards, so they don't have Bull Spike, they just don't have Siegfried, they don't have Juggernaut, they don't have those kind of cards, but they do have the Rising Nova from the new set, they don't have the Spiking Cyclone from the new set. And what will you do? Which other grade 3 you want to add to the deck? Well, of course, at least you could run the 3 copies of the Spiking Cyclone, and then when it comes to the grade 3s, you have a very good grade 3, which is Warlock, right here, which has the ability that he could intercept if you have both markers on your regular circles, and he gain a 10k shield, but also he has the first ability that your opponent would have to guard with 2 cards, as being a Vanguard, because you target him, of course, with your Rising. You have another grade 3 that you could play, which is of course Cannon. Cannon has almost the same ability as your Gyro Slinger, and with that he will be able to eat up 1 card from your hand, which is good, because then you have more soul, and then he would be able to call from the top of your decks, and and that unit gain power, if I'm not mistaken. So that's another very good ability that you could also add to the deck. And last but not least, you could just also play this card, which gains an extra 10k on both Vanguard and Ryguard Circle, which is a good beater, and at the same time just give the power to the Vanguard. So these are the options that you could play. So you could play it like this, or like this, depending on what you really want to run. But of course, this is not the optimal build, because normally you just want to have that Bull Spike in the deck, because the Bull Spike, of course, gives you access to moving markers, and with that, you will have a better game plan, at least a winning image, let's say. Okay, so we talked about these grade 3s that you could run, we talked about the different grade 2s that you could run, and now it's finally time to talk about the different grade 1s that you could run, and at the same time talk about just the other options and how the deck could shift. So other great ones that you could add to the deck to make the deck, of course, more consistent is, as we talked about, of course, the Commander Gary Cannon. Commander Gary Cannon versus Wonder Boy. It's a comparison that we have done in the past and we will keep doing. And again, depending on your preference, which one is better. In my eyes, I still like Commander Gary Cannon better, especially in the heavy retire format. But because of Luard, it is definitely not a heavy retire format. The Luard could retire sometimes, but you're not losing your whole field. And with that, Wonder Boy will actually be very active to recycle those important cards, give you soul, recycle triggers, so he is good in my eyes. Also, one definitely good thing about Wonder Boy is him switching lanes. Downside to Wonder Boy is, of course, if you don't play Wonder Boy in combination with Branch. If you do play both of these, then that's actually the best thing that you could do. But because now we play him as he has more shield value, sometimes you end up just having most of your Wonder Boys in your hand, drawing into them, damage checking them, drive checking them, and with that you don't really have the full ability of Wonder Boy, because maybe you could use him once in the whole game and that's it. That's pretty much it. Then in that case, normally the Commander Gary Cannon would be better, because you could always put the Commander Gary Cannon in the early game to pressure your opponent, and most of the time your opponent would have to take damage, because in 28 column with this attacking into the grade 1 is just amazingly stupid, and they, even if they put a heal trigger out there, that's not enough. So they would have to put a crit and just another 10k from a hand to guard that attack, and they would not do that. If they do, well, okay, perfect, why not? But they would normally not do that. So take that attack, Commander Gary Cannon to the soul, one more soul, and you will also be able to draw 2 cards and make your hand look better. So Commander Gary Cannon, in my eyes, is of course better than Wonder Boy, but for now, with my testing, I felt like the Wonder Boy was necessary, because you always get that soul, and that soul could be very important. So again, depending on what you want to run, I don't think that there is a better option right here, but if you play Commander Gary Cannon, then you could play one less grade 1. Then you could add one more grade 3 to the deck, you could add one more grade 2 to the deck, you could even play the 2-on-2, you could just choose to play the 2 barbaric and play the 2 branch, so you have a 12 grade 2s, and then you just take out the Wonder Boys and you put the Commander Gary Cannons in there. That would work as well. Yes, again, in the Luard format, I don't think that this card is necessary, but he definitely is. Other great ones that we could run in the deck are, of course, Gyroslinger and the Snapper Devil. These are 2 other great ones that you could add to the deck if you want to. Gyroslinger, before I tested Rising, in my eyes, this was MVP and a very important card to run. But throughout testing, I didn't feel that he was necessary anymore, because Rona gave you a grade 3, Acrobat Verdi search you a grade 3, which is better than calling it. And yeah, there's just no reason. You also have enough soul to use Rising, especially on the first turn, second turn, so you're good to go. Snapper Devil right here will always be a good right target. Moving the markers for a counterblast could be good, but it's another card that you just don't have space for on the field. Your field is like full. You have 2 grade 3s, you have 1 beater, and you just have like 1 space left for these cards. And what do they call? I mean, he could call something that maybe you don't need on the field. And Snapper Devil, there is just no space for him on the field. And of course, you almost always target the bull spike, and with that you could move the markers. You would rather create soul than have these cards in your hand being just dead. So that's the reason why we don't play these. The other grade 2s, I think we talked about all of them. We talked about, of course, these are the cards that we could put in the deck. Spike Bouncer, Ronaldo, we talked about those. We talked about these 2 as well. Again, depending on which format you're playing, these cards could be in handy. I would scrap Spike Monster out, because it's just he's not needed anymore because of Rona. The same goes for Ronaldo. It just is not necessary to have him. And these are the 2 cards that you actually could play in the deck, taking out one of them to put the other, or play a combination of 2-on-2. Pretty much, yeah, that's what you could do. Grade 3s, we talked about those, so I think that's pretty much it. Again, guys, let us know in the comment section below which is your favorite out of these decks, and why, because that's also very important. People are seeing all of those crazy new combos, playing a lot of the new cards, and it's just like it's important when you look up a deck profile or you look up a deck list to know how consistent that deck is, because most of the time people have sometimes a crazy combo. Let's say with the rabbit and with the skill of the General Siegfried that you could attack from the back row. Yes, it's definitely a good combo, but then you need the rabbit into your hand, or you need to get into it with the skill of, let's say, Ronaldo or Spike Monster, and then you have to have it on the field, and then you need to target it with the General Siegfried to be able to activate its ability. So that's all of those things makes the deck inconsistent. It does give you a crazy combo and a fun deck to play, but again, in a Swiss of 7-8 rounds, you will feel that the deck is inconsistent. And I would rather play a deck that focuses on smaller combos. Let's say like this deck. This deck doesn't really have big combos. It's just like you pretty much have your Rising Nova as your Vanguard, and Rising Nova will chill on the field, and with that you have your Bull Spike or your Spiking Cyclone, which you were able to call with the ability of Rona. And then from that moment on, you just call the other one from your hand, or you use the ability of Dexter, especially if you have the Bull Spike, or you call the Bull Spike in the early game because you play 4 copies of that. Then you just activate the skill of Ambush Dexter, put the Bull Spike into your soul, and then call a second Bull Spike, and of course the Spiking Cyclone right here. So this would be your field, and then yes, but you can move one of them up to attack with. You of course have the 2 markers on the field. You could put the Wonder Boy behind this. You could choose to put any other thing you want to have on the field. Pretty much anything would work, but most of the time you have at least one Wonder Boy. People also do it like this if they want to ride into Rising Nova for the second time, but me, sometimes I just ride into the Bull Spike the second time. If I do that, then pretty much they are disposable, so you could just move them up, and people will also attack into them because they fear on the next turn. So this would be your field pretty much. Sometimes your field would look a little bit like this, and then you have the Bracky if they didn't kill Bracky already. So your field could look like this. This would be the best way that your field could look like. Or you could just do it like this, depending if you're attacking into a grade 2 or a grade 3. Because if you attack into a grade 3, then you need to make a column out of these. If you're attacking into a grade 2, then this is the best thing that you could do. So this pretty much is it. This is how your field would look like. And then, of course, your Bracky will gain 5k. Wonder Boy gain 5k, a Bracky get a 10k. And use the skill to target these 2. You have 2 markers, then he gets the extra 10k. So this is just the easy combo. And again, depending on which column you have the Bracky, the markers will be there. So you attack with the Bracky, that's a 30k, and it does 2 damage because of the force 2. And most of the time, your opponent would not let this through because they don't want to take damage right away, and then you'll be able to retire and draw right away, right now, or wait a little bit, depending if they have interceptors, if they have something that you want to get rid of, because the once per turn abilities are up to you to use them whenever you like. Then you attack with the Rising right here, and now I usually don't really activate the skill of Bull Spike to move the markers, and I just activate the skill of Cyclone to restand this. Because if you would move the markers, then you lose 1 soul, and then you need to move the markers back, so you use another soul. So attacking with this with markers, losing you 2 soul. Well, if you just leave the markers there, Bracky could attack, so you win 2 souls for the next turn, and with that you don't run out of soul. And people tend to take this attack because most of the time this is the only attack that does 1 damage. And the next attack you attack with Bracky again, and then you soul blast and you move the markers to here, and then you attack with that. And one of these attacks you will retire and draw, or you retire and draw in the early attack. But normally they just take the first attack. So yeah, so that's pretty much it. That's the easy combo. Next turn they would retire this, they would retire that. Sometimes they even retire your whole field, depending what they play, of course. And you restand, and pretty much you will be able to ride into the Bull Spike or another Rising Nova. And from that moment on, it doesn't matter, because this would be a good attacker. Go to the soul, give you something different, and everything you have in your hand will be a good attacker. It's the only thing I don't like is having a booster behind my Vanguard. I would rather have the Wonder Boy right here and this there, because the Wonder Boy could switch lanes. So go to the soul, be right here. You could call something like a Rona. The Rona will be good. You could call something different if you want to be good. She could give you a Vanguard. You could just get whatever you like to get, and you could just bash your opponent, attack into them. Of course, Wonder Boy gain the extra 5k. And yeah, then you have another wave of attacks. Of course, you get one more force marker, and you put it on the same guy. So you have another wave of attacks, and yeah, this is just crazy, of course, because this would be a huge column. You attack with this right here. This is a 21, 31, 41, and then you attack with that, with this, of course, 33, and then you could move the markers right here and attack with this if you want to. And yeah, your opponent would not survive this. They would need a lot of cards in hand to be able to cope with those two markers, and them being at 4 damage doesn't help at all, because of course you have that sweet first 2 marker that your Rising gave to you. If you ride into Rising one more time and you could keep the Cyclone on the field and the Bull Spike, then that's perfect, because then you have another 4 attacking combo, and that would definitely kill your opponent. If Bull Spike doesn't kill them, then Rising is definitely a killer. And you have more markers, so you have 4 markers, which makes your Barbaric right here even better. And this card will gain a 20k shield, to make him a 25k shield by himself, which is huge, especially against clans like Aquaforce or the new Susanoo that say you cannot guard with this or you cannot guard with that. And so yeah, definitely a interesting deck to play now, Spike Brothers, because of Rising Nova. And that's pretty much it. I would like to thank you all for watching. Thank you for watching the video. Thank you for tuning in on our channel, checking our content. And of course, if you haven't subscribed yet, just subscribe to the channel and enjoy our daily content. Alright guys, till next time.